like Robbie said in all of his verbosity, my name is Lacy, and I'm part of the team here and excited to be closing out our Breakthrough series this morning. But before we get to that, I want to say a quick word about generosity in this church and what it means. One of our core values is that we want to be irrationally generous, and we want to be a blessing to the city that we are in. And so many of you guys give online and or text in to give, and we also have share boxes at different spots around the building that you give in. And so thank you so much for doing that. We like to highlight at different times what that goes towards, so you kind of get a glimpse of that. And so this fall coming up, like Robbie kind of briefly mentioned, on November 18th, you've heard us talk about, we're having our annual share offering. So that's when we all give above and beyond what we normally give so that we can collectively make a huge difference in the city. And we've been able to be a part of some really cool things that have gone on. And this year, one of our partners that we're going to be helping with at the share offering is called Generosity Feeds. So we have an event the day before the share offering, so it's Saturday, November 17th, where we are going to gather right here in this room, and we're going to donate through the share offering, but then we're also going to pack 10 to 15,000 meals in just a couple hours. Depending on how many people sign up for this is how many meals that we're going to be able to pack. And it's going to be amazing. And they're going to be distributed throughout our city to people who need it. And it's going to be a great event to be a part of. So just wanted to show you kind of what your giving goes to and some of those things. Now, to close out this Breakthrough series, the heart of this series has been to help equip you and give you tools so that in whatever area of life you need a breakthrough in, that you're able to take steps towards that and experience that breakthrough. And if you weren't able to be here last week to hear Darren's message, I really encourage you to go back and listen to that, because it's a really key piece of the puzzle in this series. And we're going to kind of build off of one of his final points this morning. One of his last points was that we grow communally. And so we're going to take a look at what that looks like and how beautiful that can be, and that we are a gift to each other. And that's what Jesus would have for us, is for us to be together in community. So the bottom line this morning is just show up. That's all it is. That's the main thing that you need to remember about today. This is a topic that I got really fired up about a few months ago as John and I were talking about some cultural trends that we are seeing just around, and my heart started breaking because I was thinking about all of the really tough life things that some of you are going through or will go through, or areas where you desperately need growth or a breakthrough. And so often, isolation can play a really big role in that. And as people, we tend to recoil and to move backwards, and we hide. And a lot of us are in need of a breakthrough in community and connection, but we might not even be aware of it. You know, it shouldn't be a surprise to you that as a culture, we are becoming more and more disconnected. We're more individualistic. We're more isolated from each other. And this can happen all over the spectrum. We're missing those moments of human connection. And so it can be things like, I used to call my mom and ask for a recipe for how to cook something, but now I can just look on Pinterest. I used to call another mom friend or two when there was something going on with my kid that I didn't know what to do with, but now I can look on WebMD or Baby Center and find it out. We get so much of our information from posts and stories instead of from conversations. I read this this week. It said, spending time online makes us believe we have gotten to know people better and know lots of important things, but we actually have come away with very little knowledge or understanding. So I'm not bashing social media, but trying to point us this morning towards what community looks like, because there is just no replacement for human connection. As a culture, we've shifted towards isolation, but that has also happened in the church world too. It used to be that when I was growing up, people that loved Jesus, and even a lot of them that didn't, would go to church every single Sunday. That was just what you did. And now those same people who are all in and like, yes, I'm following Jesus, the statistics show are showing up once a month. And that's considered being a regular attender and part of a community. And as church leaders, we're always looking and trying to grow and understand culture and reach out and think of new ways to reach people that are not here, because we constantly want to invite people in. But many would tell us that we need to accept that that is the way it is now, and that is what being a regular part of a community looks like. And as we were talking about that, I was just like, no, I don't accept that. And I don't want to accept that, because I know that we can do better. And I know that we can fight that trend. We can do better because it really, really matters. Now, let me say this. Jesus is not about rules. He is about relationships. And there might be some of you in here that have come from a really legalistic church background where it was about rules and obligations and guilt about church attendance, and that is not in any way what this is about. So, quick word to those of you watching online, please don't feel guilty. We love you. And if you're sick, we're glad you're watching at home and not here. But in John 10:10, it's one of my favorite verses, Jesus says, I have come that they might have life and have it to the full. And part of that life and that fullness is that we get to do it together, because Jesus loves you and wants a relationship with you, but that's not the only relationship that he cares about. He wants you to be in relationship with other people who are following him, and that matters a lot. So there are 3 important mindsets that we're going to talk through this morning about showing up and how much that matters. And the first one is be a belonger, not just a believer. Jesus didn't ask us to believe in him. He invited us to follow him, and he invited us to be a part of something. He created this church. A better translation for that would actually be gathering. He created it because he knew it was so important for us. You can be a believer, and that you can say you believe in Jesus, and that is a great step. But if there is no action that follows that, then we're really going to miss out on the fullness of the experience that Jesus offers to us. Even Jesus' first disciples, they didn't believe. He just invited them to follow. He was like, come with me, see what I'm about, see what I'm doing, just come on and be a part. So there might be some of you in the room today where you're like, I don't know if I believe in Jesus. I don't know what I think about all of that. And this message is for you too, because just like Jesus' disciples, they were invited to be a part of something and to just come and check it out and see what it's about. And so you are welcome to belong far before you ever believe. There are some pretty big differences between believer behavior and belonger behavior. So just to point out what a couple of those potential believer behaviors could be are that this person might pop in whenever it's convenient and there isn't anything else going on a Sunday. Or they might say, it's just me and God, and that's all I really need. So I'm just going to do a Bible study at home. Might come to church out of obligation or just routine. Would tend to complain if their preferences are not met. They might be looking to what they can get out of it, or looking for the perfect church that aligns with every single thing that they think and feel. And if there's anything tough, then they're just going to cut and run. And this one is a really common one that I've been guilty before too, is the tendency to believe that the message is the main and most important reason of why we gather on a Sunday. And that is a really common thing that happens. But if that's the main reason that we get together on a Sunday, then I would argue that we just don't need to do that. That we could just really shut this thing down, because it is a lot of effort that goes into this. And, we have access to any podcast or sermon or audiobook or biblical teaching that we could ever want whenever we want it. And so that can't be the point, the main reason why we gather, because Jesus was really clear. He wanted us to be together. He created this gathering, this way of living, this way of interacting with people. And so the belonger mentality looks a lot different. So we're going to look at some scripture and what that actually looked like and what it could look like. And we're going to be in the book of Acts. And this is a book in the Bible that was written after Jesus had died and risen again and then left the earth. And so his followers were left to create this community and to figure out what that looked like. And then we're going to look a little bit at the book of Hebrews. And that was written to a Jewish audience that had decided to follow Jesus, and they needed some instruction on what that should look like. So in Acts 2, it says, they worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Then in Acts 4 it says, all the believers were united in heart and mind, and they felt that whatever they owned was not their own, so they shared everything they had. The apostles testified powerfully to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God's great blessing was upon them all. There were no needy people among them, because those who owned land or houses would sell them and bring the money to the apostles to give to those in need. Then in Hebrews, it says, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his returning is drawing near. So in verse 24, it says, let us motivate one another. And another translation, that means spur one another on. And it says, do not neglect meeting together, but encourage one another. To encourage means to instill courage, to give courage to. So we have to come and meet together so that we can get courage, so we can give courage to each other, so we can think of new ways to love people and reach out to them so that then we can go out and then we come back and we can get more courage to go out again. This early church was a really diverse grouping of people. They came from all different walks of life and experiences, and Jesus was the unifying factor. The way they were living was so wildly countercultural. And so because of these things, they needed some help in knowing how to do this and how to make it work. And so the New Testament is filled with instructions in the church on how to be together. And these are called the Oneanother statements, and they're sprinkled all throughout the New Testament. There are 59 of them in total, and we're going to read through a few of them so you can get a glimpse of what could get a glimpse of what our goal should be, our desire should be as a gathering of people. So it says, love one another, be devoted to one another, rejoice with one another, serve one another, carry one another's burdens, forgive one another, encourage one another, offer hospitality to one another, confess our sins to one another, pray for one another. Those are awesome, right? But we can't do those by ourselves. We have to show up to experience them and to really belong to each other. So the question is, why doesn't it look like this some of the time? And that is because we do hide. We tend to take steps backwards instead of taking steps forward and in to each other. And that can happen for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different seasons of life. That can happen in big moments of life. It might be that you're planning a wedding, or you have a baby, or you have another baby, or you get a new job, and there's this big life transition that's just this big shift for you. And it's easy to take a step back and say, well, I'll get back to that when this settles down. Then there are hard life moments. There's tragedy, and there's sickness, and there's depression, and there's discouragement, and it can be hard to take steps towards people and to keep showing up. And so we can take steps back. And then there's busyness. And we can be so busy with fun things, even with traveling, with sports, or maybe we're just tired from the busy week that we've had. Then we take a step back and we keep drifting a little bit. There can be times when we step away because life is good and we don't really need anything from anybody. So we're fine. So we're not going to come. But when you start taking those steps back, one tendency that can happen is we take a step back and we drift a little bit, and then we say, well, did anyone even notice that I wasn't there? I don't know. I don't know if it even matters. Or no one called. So I'm going to keep taking steps back and keep becoming more and more disconnected. And if you've been following Jesus and have ever had a time where it's been hard, you felt disconnected from him, you've struggled in your faith, I'm guessing that if we're honest and we really look back, that also coincided with us being disconnected from his people and from others that are following him, because we're missing out on the one another's. We're missing out on that courage. So one of the questions I have for you guys this morning is, how can you take a step towards being more of a belonger than just a believer? So the second mindset we're going to look at is, in regards to showing up, is that all the moments matter. So in life, it's all of these in-between moments that pile on top of each other to kind of like create the guts of a relationship. You know, if you think about it as a family would not survive if we only did holidays, birthdays, and vacations together. That would not be a good foundation. Those are fun things, but you need all of the other mundane little moments over time to build the strength of a family. You got to eat breakfast together. You got to sit on the couch. You got to fight a little bit. You got to have conversations in the car. You notice when people are off and you see them for their real selves. It's all of these little moments that can be piled on top of each other. Because when we're devoted to each other, we have to show up. We have to carry each other's burdens. But if we don't show up, we're not bringing the burdens. We got to show up empty-handed if we're ready to take on some burdens. If we don't show up, then we're not going to be able to confess each other's sins. We're not going to be able to forgive each other when there's moments of conflict and tension. And so it's all of these little moments that just build and build and build. And it got me thinking about the church that I grew up in. My parents are awesome and did a really great job. But the church that I was raised in also had a huge part to play in raising me and teaching me things. And so there are tons of stories that I could tell you, but one stands out more than a lot of others. And it's this couple named Jim and Polly Price. And they were just the cutest, sweetest little old couple that you have ever seen. They were just like itty bitty and precious. And they were not marriage mentors of mine. They were not marriage mentors of my parents. They were not small group leaders. We didn't eat meals together even. But every single week they showed up. And every single week I showed up. And as me and my friend would walk down the aisle to go to our seats every Sunday morning, we would turn to the right to go to ours. But before we did that, we would stop on the front row on the left-hand side and give Mr. and Mrs. Price a big hug. And every single week, Jim would say to us, he'd be like, "Do you girls know why we sit on the front row?" We'd say, "No, Mr. Price, tell us why." And he would say, "Because every week I get to walk my bride down the aisle all over again." I knew that would get you. And then Polly would give us candy from her purse. And but every single week, and you know what that did? It was that moment and that connection with them that helped build what I viewed of marriage and what I hoped for in my own marriage. And it's little moments like that that I kept recalling. I'm like, man, would I have missed out if Jim and Polly Price and so many others like them stayed at home and watched online most of the time? Or if I stayed home and watched online most of the time. And that is not to make anyone feel guilty, but to let you know that you're needed. Because when you're here, you notice when someone else isn't, and you can reach out to them. When you're here, you notice when someone's countenance and their facial expressions are off, and they might need something. When you notice, when you're here, you become the people that the kids will remember when they grow up. When you're here, you get to meet and interact with people that you would never have the opportunity to know and to learn from in your everyday life. So it's these little or in-between moments that are just piled on top of each other over time. They're the layers, they're the texture, they're the spice of a community that make it such a rich experience. But we have to be there to experience them. And then there's the big moments. And those are just magic. Those are the moments that are the peaks and the valleys that break up the regular of life. They're the moments that our brains put sticky notes on so that we can remember and never forget them. They're moments of shared and collective joy and collective pain. In Brené Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, she says, how do we cultivate and grow our belief in inextricable human connection internally? The answer that emerged from my research shocked me. Show up for collective moments of joy and pain so we can actually bear witness to inextricable human connection. Women and men with the strongest true belonging practices maintain their belief in inextricable connection by engaging in moments of joy and pain with strangers. In simpler terms, we have to catch some of that lightning in a bottle. We have to catch enough glimpses of people connecting to one another and having fun that we believe that it is true and possible for all of us. So with collective pain, we want to gather. We gather for funerals. We gather to help support each other. We gather to walk through hard things. You know, when anything big and bad and tragic happens in the world, you remember who you were with and what you were doing because you're bonded together through the sharing of that pain, and there is healing that comes with that. We have all experienced pain, and we will all experience pain. It's going to be different and in different amounts, but it is a shared experience as a person. And when we can experience that together and show up for those moments, then there is a lot of healing that comes. And then there are the moments of collective joy. And these are just the best. They're things that you cannot experience on your own. You have to experience them with a bunch of people. And so I'm sure you guys can think of some examples. One of the first ones that came to my mind in my life was this trip that John and I went on a few years back. We went with some of our couple friends without kids. We drove up to New York City, and we were going to go see a Broadway show. Someone recommended Rock of Ages. Disclaimer, it is not the most morally upstanding show that exists, but nevertheless, we were there. And so we go into this theater, and it's this like cozy New York theater, so people are like crammed in there, and they're serving drinks and snacks, walking around doing it. And this show is it's based on classic rock songs, so they created a storyline that wove in with some classic rock songs. Now, classic rock is not my number one favorite type of music. It's fine, but it's not my thing. And but it was for the people that we were with. And so there was this moment in the show that I will never forget because we're sitting there in our seats and they want you to interact the whole time. And so I'm watching this crazy talented cast on the stage, and they're all standing there and they're belting out and they're so passionate and their voices are so big and beautiful. And then I look around the theater and there are all these people like swinging their arms with their heads back, singing along. And then I look down the aisle, down the row with all my people that I'm there with, and they have the biggest smiles on their faces, heads back. I won't tell you which ones were having beers and swinging those, but then the rest of them were fist pumping, and they were singing. We were all singing at the top of their lungs, and it was just this magical moment that I never, ever would have gotten if I was listening to that same song on my car radio. It just wouldn't have happened. So for those of you, hopefully that are not here, but if you don't have one of these moments, then I want to give you a little one this morning. And so we're going to do something in just a second. I'm going to ask my friend to stand up, and she is going to yell, hip, hip, hooray, with everything that she's got. But it's going to suck. And then we're all going to do it together. And we're going to give it everything we've got, and we're just going to see the contrast of how much cooler it is when you do something like that and experience it with people at the same time. So when it comes to your turn, we're going to do it 3 times because I want you to give it everything you've got, and you're all going to be nervous the first time that the people around you are not going to be as loud as you. So it's going to take 3 times for us to build up to this, and you're going to go with my motion, okay? So Rachel, I would love for you to do it. Like she tried so hard. Good job. Good job. Okay, but like I think that we can do better. So you guys stand up, get loose, get ready, because you are going to yell. Like you're going to give it everything. All right, are you ready? So hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! All right, you guys can sit down. Was that not so much better? Okay. So Brene Brown continues that quote that I read earlier. She says, the more we're willing to seek out moments of collective joy and show up for experiences of collective pain, for real, in person, not online, the more difficult it becomes to deny our human connection, even with people we may disagree with. Not only do moments of collective emotion remind us of what is possible between people, but they also remind us of what is true about the human spirit. We are wired for connection. So we're going to move and talk about the third mindset this morning, and that is we need to move from JOMO to FOMO. So I'm going to explain what these biblical Greek terms mean to you. JOMO, I think I made it up, JOMO is the joy of missing out. That is that feeling where you kind of get out of something that you're committed to, where you had this responsibility, but now you don't have to do it anymore. Like when it snows and you don't have to go to school or you don't have to go to work. That's what JOMO feels like. And the big thing that bums me out is when people have JOMO about church. Because it shouldn't be like that, and I know that there are people out there that do, because sometimes I see check-ins, and I can't even think of a particular person, so I'm not calling anyone out, but I see check-ins of like, oh, just watching from home today, love being under my covers because it's raining outside. I'm like, oh, that stinks, because I would have wanted you to be here. So we want to move from having a heart that is excited to miss out because we want a desire to be here and to be together. And so that is what FOMO is. It's the fear of missing out. Now, I suffer from this greatly. And so much so that I even have FOMO, which I also made up. And that's the fear of others missing out. Like, not only do I want to be here, but I want you all here all the time. And because I don't want you to miss out on what God might have for you. Because if we say we want to grow, and we say we want all of the fullness that an walk with Jesus offers to us, then we're going to need to develop more FOMO. And we're going to need to develop that desire and that discipline in our lives so that we can really, really enjoy and not want to miss out on being together. Because we want to be a part of all of those moments that we're making. Because when we show up for all of them, we're building a foundation of consistency and faithfulness. Constantly showing up allows God to do work. But if we don't develop the discipline and the desire to keep showing up, God isn't going to just magically do work and magically bring about change and growth and breakthrough. And I don't want you guys to miss any of it. So, what do we need to do then to help develop this discipline? And the first thing is we need to show up often. We've got to work on consistency and faithfulness. And this is going to be inconvenient. This is going to have to be a choice that you choose on purpose, that you choose over and over again. That is what it is like for our family. And there are things that we miss out on. There are invitations that we turn down. There are trips that we don't take. There are every Sunday that we don't sleep in. There are games that we miss. There are invitations we don't even get because everybody knows where we are on a Sunday. But we had to make that choice and realize that we don't want to miss out on what is happening here because we want to be so deeply rooted in our community. And that's going to take some choices, and it could be some hard ones because our lives are so hurried and so busy that sometimes we don't take the time to really evaluate if the things that are in our lives are really what's going to get us to where we want to be. Then the other thing is we need to show up for the long haul. So don't church hop. Just don't church hop. Now, there are legitimate and good reasons to move from one church to another one. But there's also a right way to do it. And there are far fewer reasons than you might think. Because if our mindset is, I am in this, I am in it with these people, and I am in this for the long haul, then it's going to yield very different results than, think about it as if you were in a romantic relationship and maybe it's your significant other or your spouse. Would you ever say, yes, I am in this, unless something better or more exciting comes along or you do something annoying, and then I'm not in this. The way we think about that relationship is going to be very different if we are fully committed. And trust and comfort is built when we are devoted to one another. This is built over time. It's all of those moments and those memories and that trust that's built up, and it takes time to simmer. It's like a crock pot, okay? It takes time. It's not just going to happen in a couple months, but it is built over time. The other thing we need to do is we need to show up fully. Now, there are so many different people represented here. We all come with different paths, with experiences, with gifts, with personalities. And we are missing out if you don't bring your full self here. We're missing out on what you have to offer because there's no one else that can offer those same things in the same way. So this is something that I ask myself and our team all the time. How can you do Sundays 1% better? How can you take one little step? So how can you come and bring more of yourself? How can you bring 1% more of yourself here on a Sunday and be 1% more fully present? Now, this is going to look different for a lot of us. You extroverts in the room, you might have to work on having some unhurried moments when you're here. Your tendency can be to run around and absorb all of the social energy from everyone. I have no idea what that would be like. And you might need to plant yourself and be more present with the people that are around you. Or you introverts out there, you might need to prepare and get charged up before you come here. You might need to manage your social energy because you are really, really needed here. You might need to linger a little bit longer instead of just scooting out. For those of you that are brand new here, your next step might be just showing up next week. It might be that you stop by the What's Next Lounge to make a connection. For those of you that this is your home, the challenge to you is going to be to not just get your people and be good, because that's what we all can tend to do, is we're like, oh, I found them, I'm set. Because if you do that, you're going to miss out on being a part of some amazing moments in people's lives. There are two ladies I want to highlight this morning, and one is Angela. And about a year or so ago, she made a commitment to herself. She was like, I'm going to think of 2 minutes to talk really differently. And so I'm going to do it with purpose. So this one Sunday, someone comes up to me and there's this girl here who wants to get baptized later today, but we don't know the details. What do I tell her? So I went over and met this girl, and she was crying. She had had an amazing experience with God. and she wanted to take the next step and get baptized. And so we're standing there, give her all the details, and then Angela is like, yeah, I'm going to be her baptism mom, and I'm going to come and I'm going to take pictures and video because her family isn't able to be here, so I'm going to make sure that it's all documented so they can see this big moment. I was like, oh, that's so awesome, like thinking that they came together. And I'm like, now, how do you guys know each other? And they both were like, oh, we just met during 2 minutes to talk. But she's like her baptism mom. And then I think of Venus, who, if you guys have met Venus, you know that girl shows up with her whole self every single week. And she has moment after moment after moment that I could share with you. But this one in particular that she told me about, she was actually leaving a service and was in the parking lot and saw this group of girls that were walking out, and she just felt this tug, like she should go and talk with them. And right after she felt that tug, she saw one of the girls on the phone, and then the girl collapsed to the ground, wailing. And then the others surrounded her and were also crying. And so Venus bolted right over to them and came over and gave them this big hug. She was like, I don't know what's going on, but I am here to give you a hug and to help however. And they shared with her that they'd just gotten word that their friend had been killed. And she just stood there and she hugged those girls and she prayed for them and she encouraged them. So when we are willing to show up fully and often and for the long haul, like we never know how God is going to connect us with others and use us in other people's stories. Natalie and Darrell, you guys can come back up. You know, this is something that I want so desperately for all of you. I want it so badly because I have experienced it so fully and so deeply. I know what it is like to lose my brother and to have people peel me up off the floor and to pray with me and for me and hug me and walk alongside of me. I know what it's like to wait and hope, but not know if I'll ever be able to have kids. But I had people that were waiting alongside of me and crying along with me, and I wasn't in it alone. I know the feeling of having young kids and feeling like you're just in the weeds and you're tired and you are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. But I know that I have never been alone. And I have had this giant community of people that have given me courage to keep going and have spurred me on. And there are some of you out there that are going through some of the toughest things that life can throw at you. And so what I want you to know this morning is that you are not alone, and you do not have to walk through it alone, because this gathering of people, we are a gift to each other. Something special happens when we get to connect with each other and experience these moments together. So would you guys bow your heads and pray with me? God, I thank you so much for the gift of your church. I thank you for the gift of this gathering. I thank you for the gift of these people that are in this room gathered this morning. Thank you that we do not have to do life alone. Thank you that you show yourself to us through others. Thank you for the ways that you have carried me through so much. And God, I lift up the people that are in this room that are walking through a storm right now and they feel alone. God, I pray that they would not leave here feeling alone, but that they would make a connection. God, I pray for the person right now that came in not knowing if they wanted to follow you, but this sounds like something they want to be a part of. And so I pray that you would give them the courage to say yes to taking a step towards you, Jesus. And Lord, I pray that as a community of people that we can grow in this together. I pray that we can be together more, that we would love and desire to be together more and to make those memories together. God, I thank you so much for the work that you are doing in hearts, and I pray that there would be breakthroughs in community and connection all over this place. And we ask all of this in your name. Amen. So now we get to experience another moment together. This is a moment that unites us as a church with churches everywhere. It unites us with this early church that we just read about. This is something that we get to do together as a family. So for those of you that are not familiar with what communion is, those of us that choose to follow Jesus, he set this example for us. And it's something that we do as a reminder of the sacrifice that he made for us. It's when we remember and are thankful for how much he cares for us and all that he has done. So if you do not feel comfortable taking communion this morning, there is no pressure. You can just pass that bucket on down, and it is fine. For those of you that do want to take communion, you guys can go ahead and start passing the buckets. There are little cups in the buckets. There's a wafer that's on top of the cup, so you just need to grab that cup. But if you're gluten-free, there's a little baggie with the wafer in there. So if you're gluten-free, grab a cup and a baggie. Jesus gathered his followers around the table, and he said, when you do this, remember me. Remember how deep my love is for you. And so today, we're going to do that together. As soon as the buckets are done, if you have your little cup, you can peel back the top layer that has the wafer in it. Then once we're done taking communion, then Natalie and Darrell are going to lead us in one more song. We're going to sing it together. But if you've had a moment with Jesus today and you want to connect with somebody, talk to any of us around here. There's also the What's Next Lounge with people there that are just ready to talk and would love to connect with you. So don't walk out of here feeling like you're alone. All right, if you would take that little cracker, we're going to pray. Dear God, as we hold this bread, we know that it represents your body that was broken for us. We are so thankful that we get to remember you. We are so thankful for your sacrifice. We are so thankful that because of that sacrifice, we get to live in your fullness and experience all that you have for us. So you guys can go ahead and take the bread. Then you can peel back the next layer and open up the cup. So God, as we drink this juice, we remember that this is your blood spilled for us. We remember that it was painful for you to love us. And we are so thankful for the way that you save and redeem and restore and fulfill us. So God, I pray that as we drink this juice that we will remember and take pause and be thankful for all that you have done. In Jesus' name.